You ever look up at the night sky and just feel completely in awe, but maybe also a little bit lost? Well, a 16th century theologian named John Calvin had this really powerful way of talking about that exact feeling, and it all revolves around a pair of what he called divine spectacles.
So let's start with the big question. When you look at all the incredible stuff in the universe, the stars, the mountains, just how complex life is that really enough? I mean, does looking at all that give you a clear, complete picture of whatever or whoever made it? For Calvin, the answer was a hard no. And his reason why is pretty fascinating.
Now, don't get me wrong, Calvin absolutely believed that creation shouts about God's existence. He described the whole universe as this beautiful, glorious book open for everyone to see, and it's more than enough to prove that a creator exists. But, and this is a huge but, just because the book is open right in front of us doesn't mean we can actually read it. Here's his analogy. Imagine you're an old man with really blurry vision. Someone puts a gorgeous, perfectly written book in front of you. You can tell it's a book, you can see there are letters on the page, but you can't make out a single word. That's us, Calvin says. Our spiritual vision is naturally flawed and blurry, so we're just left with a confusing, jumbled mess.
So what's the fix for this spiritual nearsightedness? Well, that's where his famous idea comes in. Divine spectacles. And for him, these spectacles are scripture. The Bible, he argued, is the essential tool we need. It's like a prescription lens for the soul that corrects our focus, takes all that confused knowledge about God floating around in our heads, and finally lets us see him clearly.
And the difference these spectacles make is like night and day. Without them, our minds are just tossed and agitated, jumping from one error to the next. But with Scripture, all that scattered information gets gathered up and focused. The confusion clears, and we can finally move from worshiping all sorts of wrong ideas to seeing the one true God. Okay, so we've put on the spectacles. But it's not like you just see one new thing. For Calvin, this new vision allows us to know God on two totally different levels, one building on top of the other.
First, Scripture helps us see clearly what creation only hints at. This is the knowledge of God as the Creator, the one who made and runs the universe. But then it goes deeper, way deeper. It gives us a second kind of knowledge, knowing God as the Redeemer. This is that inner, personal knowledge that Calvin says quickens dead souls and shows us the way to salvation. And this second part, this is the absolute game changer for Calvin. He believed pretty much anyone could look at nature and get a vague idea of some kind of creator. But it's this specific knowledge of the Redeemer, something you can only get from the Word, that really separates believers from, well, everyone else. It's the knowledge that offers real hope.
Right, but this brings up a pretty logical question, doesn't it? If God used to speak through prophets and visions, why did it all need to be written down in a book? Why couldn't it just stay a spoken tradition? Well, Calvin's reasoning here is actually super practical. He knew that human memory is, well, it's terrible, and that truth is fragile, so he argued it had to be written down on public tablets, basically to protect it from us, to stop it from being forgotten, to keep it from being twisted by mistakes, and to guard it against people who would intentionally try to corrupt it. A written text gives a kind of solid certainty that you just can't get from opinions.
So this all leads to a pretty stark choice. A final picture that Calvin paints for humanity about the search for God.
Without Scripture as a guide, we're basically wandering around lost in a giant, confusing maze. He says God's glory is like an inexplicable labyrinth. We can sense there's something amazing at the center, but if we try to find it on our own, with just our blurry vision, we're gonna get lost. It's inevitable.
And the contrast he paints is so powerful. On one side, you have someone running full sprint, super confident, but they're completely off the path, lost in the maze of error. On the other side, you have someone who's just limping along, moving slowly, but they're on the right road, heading straight toward God.
And that brings us to one of his most memorable lines. I mean, just think about that. It's better to limp on the right path than to sprint on the wrong one. For Calvin, your direction is infinitely more important than your speed. So, to wrap this all up, Calvin gives us this powerful image of Scripture as the one clear path, the essential divine spectacles we need to find our way out of the maze. But this whole idea leaves us with a really big question for today. If the path is so clear, what does it mean when so many people put on the spectacles, walk the path, and end up in completely different and often conflicting destinations?